I hadn't entered that office since Grandpa Merrick's condition started worsening, and even today I only showed up because he'd made me swear to it. The meeting room carried the aroma of citrus polish and aged documents, the sort of odor that stuck to timber and hidden truths. My mom fiddled with her pearl choker using a flawlessly polished fingernail. My dad sat rigidly, with his arms folded, as if preparing for a fight. And Kalia, always the polished favorite, sported an ivory top far too spotless for sorrow and a smirk that suggested she'd already triumphed. Mr. Halpern, Grandpa's attorney for more than 30 years, cleared his throat and unfolded the binder with careful, measured actions. We have assembled to respect the last desires of Merrick Wynne. His tone remained steady, even as he gazed straight at me prior to announcing the distributions out loud. To Kalia Wynne, he started, the Jackson Hole Lodge and the classic 1959 Gibson guitar. Kalia fluttered her eyelids, obviously anticipating additional items. To Everett and Lysette Wynne, his words went on, the antique grandfather clock, chosen vinyl albums, and a $10,000 donation to charity in their honor. My mom emitted a sound midway between a snort and a choke. That can't be accurate. Mr. Halpern stayed composed. He flipped to the following sheet. To Serafina Wynne, my granddaughter, my trusted companion, he bequeaths his complete monetary holdings amounting to $38,246,000. Quietness, then what? My dad snapped. Kalia's chin quivered. My mom rose to her feet, cheeks reddened. She deserted us. She doesn't merit, Mr. Halpern proceeded without raising his gaze. This testament was executed, authenticated, and recorded by Merrick Wynne himself 3 months before his passing. They ignored the remainder. My dad leaped over the table, grabbed the check Mr. Halpern had just passed to me, and raised it as if it were fake. You believe this gets you reinstated? Before I could reply, he struck a match. The check shriveled and darkened as the flames licked along the border. My mom seized the envelope I'd been holding, shredding it until Grandpa's penmanship turned into fragments. This is what occurs when you betray your kin, she snarled. I stayed still. I didn't plead. I simply grinned. The type of grin that fails to touch your gaze but holds you firm. Because what they incinerated wasn't what they assumed, and what they overlooked was the packet still hidden within my jacket. The final genuine talk I had with my dad concluded with him declaring, if you step out that entrance, you don't step back inside. I was 19. I just rejected a complete scholarship to his old school's business course and signed up instead at a tiny humanities school in the north to pursue graphic arts. He labeled it a pastime with illusions. My mom didn't dispute. She merely positioned herself behind him with her mouth clamped so firmly it almost vanished. 3 weeks afterward, I returned for Thanksgiving and discovered my bedroom emptied out. The workstation, the mattress, even the bookcase with the messages Grandpa used to slip among the volumes, vanished. In their spot were 2 slate recliners, an artificial orchid, and a mounted picture of a beacon I'd never encountered. The nameplate on the door had been switched from Serafina to visitor Suite A. Kalia brushed past me in the corridor and chuckled. Don't overreact. It's not as if you were utilizing it. They didn't sever ties with me abruptly. Initially, it was minor stuff, overlooked birthday greetings, ignored phone calls. Then the housing payment from my parents failed to arrive. When I phoned to inquire, my mom sighed and stated, choices bring results, Sarah. You sought autonomy. Now you've got it. I would have forfeited the rental if Grandpa hadn't intervened. He transferred the precise sum 2 days later without inquiries. Following that, the funds arrived in a subtle pattern, not excessive, never showy, just sufficient to maintain the electricity and the warmth. Accompanying it were notes in his unsteady, graceful handwriting. He never faulted me for departing. He never urged me to return. But in each sentence, there was something more potent than both. He recognized me. The final one I ever got came 3 weeks prior to his departure. It stated merely enduring isn't frailty. It's the initial evidence of power. I folded that note into my purse and kept it through every employment denial, every quiet celebration, every night spent acting like I was indifferent. I kept it even now as the remnants of the phony check cooled on the surface, before me and my fingers slid into my jacket, to feel the authentic packet lingering there. The initial action I took upon arriving home was secure the entrance behind me and remove my pumps. My limbs were shaking, but not from terror, more like fatigue restrained for too long. I placed my jacket on the dining seat and extracted the packet Grandpa had provided me a month before his death. He delivered it in a secluded spot at a hillside eatery, encased in a fabric serviette as if presenting an artifact. Don't unseal it, he instructed, unless they incinerate it. And they had. I cracked the wax imprint and unfurled the items gradually. A loan check nearly matching the one that had become cinders before me mere hours ago. The identical figure, identical endorsement, but this one was labeled in small crimson characters, non-cashable duplicate. My digits didn't quiver. I flipped the check and discovered a tiny USB stick attached to the reverse with a scrawled memo in Grandpa's square lettering. Let them torch it. Then access the genuine document. I connected it. There was no startup display, no security query, just one directory named Legacy, and within it a PDF duplicate of a fund relocation paper. It was authorized, observed, and submitted via a company I didn't know. The account digits concluded in numbers I'd committed to memory as a kid, his birth date reversed. The assets were legitimate. The shift had already occurred, weeks earlier. The check they destroyed wasn't merely a lure, it was a trap. I reclined in my seat, the quietness in my flat dense as plush fabric. This wasn't concerning them any longer. It hadn't been for some time. Grandpa hadn't simply relied on me, he'd anticipated their responses phase by phase. And now, so would I. The following day, I attempted to verify my bank total, part routine, part comfort. The display flickered once, then twice before a fault notice emerged. Profile not located. I tested another plastic. Rejected, I updated the sign-in page and entered everything more slowly as if accuracy could repair the error. Still zilch. At first, I convinced myself it was a protection block, perhaps a scam alert from the prior day's happenings. But when I contacted the financial institution, the guy on the line seemed uncertain. "I'm sorry, Miss Wynn," he remarked, clicking at buttons I couldn't view. "Our database lists your profile as dormant. Deceased, in fact." My throat dried up. "That's an error," he hesitated. "It was verified by the records office, dated 2 weeks back." I disconnected before my tone could falter. The motor vehicles department verified it 60 minutes later. The lady at the counter squinted at her screen, scowled, and announced, "You're marked as officially deceased. Death record submitted under your complete identity, Serafina Lysette Wynn." Her voice was even, but her glance shifted to me with sympathy. "You'll have to submit an amendment. That procedure might require months." I didn't respond. I exited into the chill, stunned as if somebody had stripped the borders of reality and shown that all I believed was firm could disappear. On the opposite side of the road, a lady remained motionless, partially obscured under a line of leafless branches. Her shades were oversized for the overcast weather. She had a light azure silk wrap circled once about her throat, the identical wrap my mom insisted the cleaners had misplaced 3 years prior. She didn't grin, she didn't avert her gaze, she was observing. I retreated into the stream of pedestrians and proceeded without deliberation, not rapidly but intentional. When I rounded the bend, she had vanished. Back in my flat, I yanked open the compartment where I stored ancient correspondence and arranged them like clues. I wasn't merely disowned. I was being eliminated methodically, silently, and completely, and somebody was monitoring to ensure it endured. I launched my computer, removed the USB from its holder, and gazed at the directory Grandpa had tagged, Inheritance. Somewhere within was the subsequent move. The copper key had rested in my bedside table for years, bundled in the identical frayed cloth Grandpa presented it to me on my 18th birthday. I never inquired what it unlocked. He simply remarked, "You'll require this one day when you're prepared to assert your identity." That day had arrived. Langford's secure storage was positioned behind an unlabeled entrance close to the boundary of the old neighborhood, nestled amid a fancy wine store and a worn bookshop. The lady at the reception examined the key, reviewed her logs, and guided me along a hushed hallway without posing any queries. The atmosphere cooled the deeper we advanced, until we arrived at a slim chamber lined with steel compartments. "Container 17, she stated, unfastening the slot and pushing it out. I acknowledged and paused until the entrance shut after her before extending inside. A dark, flame-resistant binder rested there, its exterior sleek and chilly. I parted it cautiously. The initial sheet was a verified bank draft, authentic this time, with the institution's emblem pressed into the material. 38 million directed to me. The following group of papers was denser. Authenticated property titles conveying total control of the family property's base land. Then, more equity papers for Wynn Carroll Enterprises, each voting portion, each managerial power. My identity penned on everyone, and at the base, a memory stick in a soft bag. Back in my flat, I inserted it into my computer and selected the loan file within. Grandpa's image occupied the display. He appeared more aged than I recalled, positioned in the solarium with sunlight streaming across his arm. If you're viewing this, Sarah, then they performed what I dreaded they might. They attempted to obliterate you. He talked gradually but distinctly, each term purposeful. You were always the reserved one, the one who observed all, experienced deeply, requested zilch. That's why they dreaded you. That's why I depended on you. He inclined ahead a bit, gaze weary but keen. This isn't merely funds. It's recollection. It's heritage. And if they sought to incinerate yours, this is how you return. The display dimmed to darkness, and I understood precisely where I had to proceed next. I discovered the packet affixed just under the spy hole on my entryway, basic white, no postage, no script, except one row in tidy square characters. They didn't torch the authentic check. Check in container series at Langford Protection. There was no endorsement, no clue of who had placed it, just quiet on the far side of the entrance. I remained at the counter for an extended period, examining it, then extended for my computer. Langford possessed multiple storage sites. Container series wasn't shown openly, but I knew the term. Grandpa once quipped it was where they conceal the actual skeletons. I signed into the property email that had been established during the fund shift and located a communication I hadn't spotted earlier. The header was empty. The content merely a phrase. They're not pursuing the funds. They're pursuing the endorsement. Attached was one paper, an unendorsed resource shift document. At the summit, Win Carroll Enterprises. Beneath it, another document, this one endorsed. My identity was present, but the endorsement wasn't mine. They'd counterfeited it. They were vending the firm. I accessed the company's private interface and entry Grandpa had arranged months prior, and there it was, dealings suggestions, resource reallocation. Each action sanctioned under my identity while my official status stayed deceased. I was beyond disowned. I was a gap, a handy quiet. They believed they'd seized all, but they abandoned a path, careless, audacious, and grounded in conceit, the sort that assumed nobody like me would ever return. I extended for Grandpa's memory stick once more and accessed a directory tagged Charleston Property Records. My identity was recorded under each parcel, and I knew where I was heading next. The identity on the rental was W.M. Trillium, an alias Grandpa once employed for angling permits and vintage album bids. A gag, he mentioned, Win Merrick, like the bloom that persists sprouting where it's not expected. I recalled that during the journey beyond the urban boundaries through corroded fields and abandoned areas, until I arrived at a low line of storage facilities and located Unit 19. The latch snapped open with a tiny copper key from the soft bag. The interior air was musty but not undisturbed. A lone steel rack covered the distant wall, and in the middle, as if positioned there for me to uncover, was a dark, flame-resistant attaché within a beige folder with my authentic birth record, not the revised one with my stepdad's last name. This one contained only mine, Serafina Lysette Wynn. No dash, no alterations. Next were the notes. 12 altogether, each in Grandpa's distinctive handwriting. Most were timed within days of major family occasions, my university commencement, my parents' commitment renewal, the holiday I passed solo. He'd composed them but never dispatched them. One phrase recurred frequently, "They won't obliterate you, not while I'm still upright." Under the notes was an authenticated testament dated following the alleged time of my demise. His endorsement was robust, intentional. In it I was designated exclusive recipient, not Kalia, not Everett or Lysette, me. But what halted my respiration was the title, Wynn Property, Charleston, SC. Possession, Serafina Lysette Wynn. My digits grazed over the raised emblem. I hadn't simply acquired a residence. I'd acquired the base, the soil beneath their authority, and they were unaware. I settled on a splintered vinyl seat near the entrance, gripping the binder to my torso, sensing the form of my identity for the first time in ages. I wasn't a specter, and they had no notion I was already striding back through the portal. They assumed they'd locked tight. Sylvia Orton didn't say a lot when I delivered her the attaché. She simply parted it, reviewed the papers with acute vision, and remarked, "We'll act swiftly." There was no wonder in her voice, just assurance like she'd witnessed sufficient kin betrayals to recognize when the documentation contained potency. We submitted the dispute within 2 days. The session was scheduled for Monday. The judicial building carried the scent of polished surfaces and ancient rulings. I dressed in black, not for lamenting, but because protection doesn't always make noise. My parents showed up as a pair, supported by a youthful attorney in an overly snug outfit and overly casual grin. Kalia followed them, lips shiny, device in grasp. They avoided glancing at me. Judge Kinley oversaw, recognized for brief remarks and minimal patience for drama. When our matter was summoned, he gestured toward Sylvia. She rose composed and purposeful. "We are present to challenge the fulfillment of the holdings of Merrick Wynne," she declared, based on falsification, pressure, and persona concealment. The rival lawyer rolled his eyes. "Your Honor, my patrons are the registered recipients. Any efforts to alter the testament after death are not only baseless, they're sentimental." Sylvia pressed her device. "Your Honor, the departed expected this." With one tap, the illumination lowered and the monitor behind the platform illuminated. Grandpa's image emerged. "If they're viewing this," he stated, "it signifies they attempted to inter her." His tone was firm, balanced. "Let the logs indicate I modified the testament consciously under no compulsion. I designated Serafina as exclusive successor because she deserved it, because she persevered." The courtroom became motionless. Kalia's lips parted, then sealed. My mom blanched. My dad moved as if about to interject, but Judge Kinley lifted a palm. "Sufficient." He directed his attention to them, his voice icy. "You didn't merely attempt to deceive this tribunal. You attempted to eliminate an individual." Then he gazed at me. "This tribunal acknowledges Serafina Wynne as the exclusive lawful successor to Merrick Wynne's holdings. The defendant's resources are to be suspended awaiting additional probe." I breathed out, not from alleviation but liberation. The harm was inflicted. Now arrived the accountability. Kalia messaged twice before I responded. The initial text was brief, "Please." The second was extended, more awkward. "Can we just converse, just us?" Like previously, I consented to encounter her at a coffee shop near the judicial building. Impartial territory, no past linked. She was there already when I reached, mixing a brew she hadn't sampled. Her grin wavered when she spotted me. I didn't realize she uttered before I could settle. About the demise record, about the testament. They informed me it was a standard paper. I just endorsed where Dad instructed. I remained silent. I placed my device on the surface, display off but capturing. "I promise, Sira, I didn't intend for any of this. I didn't realize they'd proceed that extensively." Her voice broke. "I assumed we were merely safeguarding what belonged to us." "What belonged to you?" I echoed. She recoiled. "I mean, I didn't believe you'd resist. You always just departed." That segment was accurate, but I wasn't the young woman who departed any longer. "I'm regretful," she murmured. I was frightened. I thought if I didn't comply, they'd exclude me too. I observed her brush a droplet with the cuff of her costly jacket. It wasn't that I didn't trust she experienced remorse. I just didn't mind if she did. No warnings, no fury. Just quiet. I rose, slipped the device back into my pouch and moved away without glancing rearward. Her voice trailed me midway through the coffee shop, but I didn't halt. Outside, the atmosphere carried the scent of far-off precipitation. I drew my jacket closer and strolled not toward the history, not even toward retribution, just onward. And awaiting in my messages was the ultimate paper Grandpa had provided me, labeled in thick letters shift of title, valid upon verification. The judicial building stairs were more hushed than I anticipated. No photographers, no clash, just the noise of my footwear clicking steadily against aged cement as I descended. In my grasp was the title, my identity inscribed in thick font under the emblem of the region and the holdings. No further uncertainty, no further acting. I stopped just prior to the final stair and pivoted back, confronting the structure I'd battled so extensively to be acknowledged in. I raised the title before me and captured one image. No grin, just calmness. The description I entered was straightforward. They attempted to incinerate the heritage. I acquired the base. Then I powered off my device and placed it into my satchel. No triumph celebration, no declaration, no necessity. I proceeded 5 streets in quiet to the compact brick workshop I'd finalized 2 days prior, a simple area with high panes and worn surfaces nestled amid a flower cellar and an overlooked laundry service. It wasn't grand yet, but it belonged to me. I unlatched the main entrance, entered, and extended for the packet Grandpa had placed in the storage, the one tagged "Begin Here." Within were 3 items, a manually sketched plan of the workshop's layout, a creased enterprise permit request already partially filled in his script, and a note with 4 terms emphasized, "Create something they can't obliterate." I settled, legs crossed on the grimy surface, the burden of all I'd forfeited and recovered, resting around me like particles following a tempest. This wasn't vengeance. It wasn't even fairness. It was the commencement, and I was prepared to construct.